Okay, historical critical method, or the HCM. This is what's the term that's generally used to talk about the way that historians, and by that you can mean, historians of anything, of history, of scripture, of religion. I'm just pouring the coffee I made for myself, which I didn't get done in time. This is, I'm going to just go through a couple of important principles, parts of it. The main idea is that through interrogation of sources, of historical sources, texts from the past, fragments of, relics, archaeological ruins, artifacts, we can, as the great German historian, the kind of father of modern history, Leopold von Ranke, who died in 1886, he said, the job of the historian is to find out what really happened. So we have suspicion towards previous historians. So pre-modern historians, the people who wrote, the chronicle of this, or the guy who was the court historian of King Henry VIII, or the Ibn Kathir, or some, medieval Indian historian, or anything like that. We're very critical of them. The default is that we're suspicious of them, that they are trying to mislead us, that they're lying, that they are ignorant or something, but that by applying the correct tools to these sources, and using what we understand about how history works and how humanity works, we can reconstruct the past and figure out what really happened. What were the origins of a religion or a dynasty or a people or a language? Now, but it's very important that this notion that the default is suspicion, right? It's the historical critical method. The fundamental thing is that you are critical of the past, critical of things told to you about the past. That's the founding stone of this approach. But this is very, very important. They're critical of certain things and towards certain people. And this is where the bias comes in, which I'm going to talk about later. They're critical towards about certain things and about certain people, not about other things. Okay? Just imagine this. If I tell you, here's a report, right? A Persian woman, Iranian woman says, I can't stand the hijab. I just want to be free and, express myself. And here's the other report. An Iranian woman says, I like wearing the hijab. This is part of my religion and important part of my faith. And it actually makes me feel protected and ennobled. Which one do you think a Westerner is going to be critical of? Even a scholar is going to be critical of? I don't even need to answer that question. You know the answer, right? So there's you can see where our biases, although both of those reports are entirely possible, right? People say both of those things. You can hear them with your own ears saying these things, but one of them is going to be treated with suspicion and one of them is not. A couple of really important principles, and maybe these are sort of the foundation stones of the Western foundation pillars of the Western historical critical method. The first one is called uniformitarianism. This is a really weird word. It's a scholar named, I think, William von Leyden came up with it in the 1950s. There's another term as well called the principle of analogy, but we'll go with this one. What this says is that essentially people are always the same. Cultures may differ, languages may differ, hairstyles can change, interest rates fluctuate, things like that. But basically, people are always people. And people are always what? They're always greedy, they're self-centered, they're short-sighted, they're forgetful, right? It's a kind of cynical look at human nature and the assumption that there is a human nature and it's always the same, right? The second is the concept of anachronism. Anachronism is the idea of things being out of place in time. Anachronism is the idea of things being out of place in time. So the idea, imagine if you saw a report that said that, when John F. Kennedy was trying to resolve the Cuban Missile Crisis, the first thing he did is he reached in his pocket, grabbed his mobile phone and called his brother to try and discuss some option. Immediately, this report is unreliable or something's wrong with it because cell phones didn't exist in the 1960s. Right. So that's something that's out of place in time, an anachronism. And finally, the principle of dissimilarity. What this says is that if something goes against what it's kind of like in court when you, one of the things that you can use as an exemption to the hearsay restriction, like normally you shouldn't be allowed to testify about things that you heard other people say. But one of them is statements made against interest. So if you say something that doesn't serve your interest, then it's accepted in court. Similar, this is very similar, right? So you accept the report if it doesn't seem to say what the powerful people want it to say. So if someone were making up a story, why would they include this report? It goes against what they're trying to do. So if you're a Christian, if you find a report that says that Jesus said, "I'm not God, I'm not the Son of God, I'm actually just a regular guy, stop saying this about me, and don't get any weird ideas." If you found that in some document, you'd probably think it was true, because that's not what Christians would be making up. Okay, so that's a principle of dissimilarity. Now we'll go into these origins. By the way, Awesome, you can tell me when you tell me when we have like 10 minutes left. Okay, I assume you.
Yeah, no, I'll do that.
Okay, so its origins explain these biases. The origins of the historical critical method explain the biases we'll go into. So the first stream that goes into it is the Renaissance rediscovery of the classics. By here, the classics, I mean the Greco-Roman heritage. Renaissance, of course, is a period, roughly from the late 1300s to the